back, everyone. We have an unboxing that wasn't scheduled for this week, but I actually have a meeting with the company that sent these tomorrow. So if you have any questions, please leave those in the comments. But what I have here are a couple of document cameras that were sent in by a company called Okiocam. They sent their Okiocam T and the Okiocam S in for me to look at. These are relatively similar, although the T is clearly a much larger box. Other than the names printed on the front, however, all of our packaging looks the same. You know, we've got our copyright, a quick getting started with some nice graphics on how to set it up and plug it in. Now, they do tell you that there is a Chrome app and extension for it. Although I don't believe you actually need that to use these. We'll take a look at that in a moment. So 1 year limited warranty from Data Purpose. Contact support at Okio Labs if you have any problems. Let's start with the S, because I think the T is just going to be the same thing scaled up, and this is the one that I anticipate more of you having a use for. Alright, so we've got this little cardboard thumb tab. Open that up. We get some bubble wrap. And let's slide this out. This is actually much smaller than I anticipated it being. Quick start guide. Alright, so firmly grasp the device in your left hand with your thumb on top and fingers behind the base. Slowly wheel the arm away towards the base till it comes free. So, alright, so what they're saying is that this wiggles out. So this is the base, this is a storage. You store it here. Do not forcefully pull on the arm to avoid deformation of the base. Guys, your quick start in the manual here. So it starts off great. Instructions for first-time users. Here's how to take it off. Slowly wiggle the arm away and towards you until it comes free. Do not forcefully pull on the arm. Okay. But then it doesn't tell you what to do with it afterwards. It just goes directly into the About and the video conference tools. This supports Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, Skype, FaceTime, Zoom. You can use it with the Windows Camera app, QuickTime on Map, Chromebook Camera app, Flipgrid. I've never heard of Flipgrid or Seesaw. I think those are educational specific. And here's the education kit and a list of plugins for, Okiocam Snapshot Recorder, Time-Lapse, Stop Motion, Google Slides, Docs, Sheets, Forms, add-ons. And there's a link to that, which is all great. But they're missing these instructions that are on the box. Not that they're particularly difficult. Detach the camera arm from the base. Plug the arm into the use slot of the base, which is just here. So the difference is that this one stores like that, and then this side is rotated 90 degrees, at which point we can lift up the arm, which has these nice little channels for running the cable on it. Which I'm going to detach the twist tie here. And secure that there. And then the rest of this is the head. This rotates. There's a little brass mount on it as well, which is a nice touch. Although I feel like I'm missing a degree of... Alright, okay, so it's supposed to be kind of like that. Unfold the base, which we've got this nice magnetic feeling. Is there a magnet in there? I don't feel any magnets trying to test it really quick. So we've got this nice fold-out base that is in 4 parts, and that actually folds out nice and flat. And then we plug it into our computer, and it says press the gray button to auto adjust the focus exposure and white balance if necessary. So we've got a focus adjust option here. And we've got this plastic, which is a little bit disappointing. I would have liked that to have been metal. But we've got this. Let's pull that a little bit further there, a little bit further here. Don't need quite that much slack up there. So we've got this plastic articulating arm that allows us to adjust our camera height. And the purpose of this is billed as a document camera. I wish they gave me the specs on here. They don't quite list any of those in the documentation either. This S is, I believe, a 3 megapixel sensor and is intended for use with, well, there's a nice button there, letter size paper. This is the T, which I'm betting is set up almost exactly the same. So let's slide the S out of our way. Which we get the same exact printed instructions. We do get a thank you card here, which I did not get one of those with the other camera. Although amusingly, I didn't get the instruction book. Not that the instruction book was particularly useful for using the camera, so I wonder if we're seeing the difference between old and new packaging. So this just says, thank you for choosing us, and here's a list of information and where to go get it, and a QR code that you can scan for more stuff. That feels like a newer kit, so that makes me think they may be selling more of these T's, which once again, it's the same setup. We just do that, and then it is unfold camera, and by the way, you can optionally raise the height on this one. Is this actually the same arm? So what they've done is they've used the same arm and what looks like the same head, but this is, according to what I saw on their website, a higher resolution sensor. And then there's an additional extension for this so that you can use it on larger size or smaller paper. So you could use it just like the other one at this height and fold out your grid the same way. Now, so the grid is just outright bigger. It's a wider grid. I thought this extended out further. Anything I missed? Nope. Is the extension a separate kit? That may have just been the perspective when I was looking at it online that made this look much dramatically larger than it is. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is in fact bigger than the other one. So this is the Okiocam S. This is a 1440p sensor according to their documentation. And it is intended for letter size paper. And this is 1920 by 1440, so that it can do 16 by 9 and 4 to 3. The Okiocam T here has a larger 11 by 17 capture size, which is a 2592 by 1944 maximum resolution, and a 5 megapixel sensor, and does, of course, all the sizes down and will still work for letter size capture. And the reason that I think that this one came with what looks like newer packaging. The Okiocam S is $69. The Okiocam T, which is this larger model, is listed at $89. So for $20, you get a bigger sensor, a bigger work area, and a little bit more flexibility. Considering how these compare to other document cameras that I've seen, I'm not particularly surprised that this one would sell better. Other document cameras I've seen, and here, let's finish setting this one up because we got ahead of ourselves a little bit, will typically retail for hundreds of dollars. So either one of these is a steal. I am curious if the T comes with a longer USB cord, and it looks like the answer is no. Both USB cords are the same length, which is kind of a bummer since this one has this additional height adjust that you'd probably use when working with 11 by 17 pages. So that ends up giving you a roughly, let's say, 6-inch shorter cord. When I say shorter, it's shorter effective. These are both the same length cable, but when you raise the height on the larger model, obviously you have more cable caught up in the rigging on the camera module. And I want to see if there's any visible differences on these camera modules. There is one. The Okiocam T's camera module, and this will probably be pretty obvious here, is larger. Physically, it's larger. So we've got a couple of buttons on both of them. As mentioned, the one button is a focus button. By default, the other buttons, one has a magnifying glass that is a zoom. So we get a zoom button. This is our auto focus, reset focus, which also does white balance. For one button auto adjust, this is a snapshot button by default. And this blue button is an on-off, is an activate button. So that's just a quick overview on these. I do want to take a minute to plug one into something. And let's go ahead and plug in the Okiocam T, because I'm honestly way more excited about that one. Let's go ahead and fold this up. And then that stores like that. So I do want to actually, since I folded that up, make two quick comments on the fold up and storage procedure. Number one, folding up, not terrible. I do like that it folds back down to store. Number two is I think that there are potentially two accessories missing here. I don't have a loop to contain this cable, which, I mean, I've got Velcro straps that I can take a section of 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch Velcro and just wrap it around the whole unit. But it would be nice if Okiocam had one of those first party built into these collapsing tubes. It wouldn't be particularly hard. It's just plastic to drill a hole through and put a Velcro strap in there. Number two is that there's no carrying bag. Once again, I can get a small bag and put one of these in there and then throw it in my briefcase, which would be a fantastic application for a document camera like this. But I don't have a first-party one. They'd probably sell them if, you know what, for 10 or 20 bucks, I could get a bag that this whole thing just slipped in, and maybe the bag could have some management for the cable. I mean, we are talking about a $70 and $90 document camera already. Some of the cheaper document cameras that I found when I initially saw these were over 200 bucks, you know, used on eBay, and they would output via HDMI, at which point now I need some kind of HDMI interface to pull them in, and then they need additional power. These are just USB, which I understand that being a USB video source is both a benefit and a detriment to these. On the benefit side, I can plug this into my laptop, and since it supports Zoom and all those things, bring it into those things natively, or I use OBS for my camera so that I can switch between different inputs and bring different screens up quickly, and something like this is fantastic for that. Since it's not an HDMI input, it'll just show up here. I'm just going to plug it into my ThinkPad and see how long it takes it to show up. Natively. Oh, and Windows sees it, recognizes it as no camp, recognizes it as no camp, recognizes it as an Okiocam T. God, that was difficult to pronounce that time. I promise I haven't been drinking today. It's going to take a second to set it up, but I'll be able to bring this in, no problem, to that particular workflow. An HDMI device I wouldn't be able to. And the big distinction there is an HDMI device I would want if I was sending this directly to a projector. I started seeing those phased in towards some of my later college years. We saw the traditional overheads go away. Some of the higher end classrooms that already had projectors, we started to see document cameras show up. And they had a couple of advantages over this camera, where they would have arms with lights. Granted, they were just fluorescent tubes at that point, and various things of that nature. But those wouldn't be particularly useful in the age of Zoom. All right, so right away, I opened up the Windows Camera app. I'll just fold this down so I'm actually going to bring the camera over, and I'm not doing an OBS record for this, so we're just going to take some footage of my laptop like that, which I know isn't ideal. So right away, it just shows up in the Windows Camera app, and look at that. I pressed the button and it focused, and I can see everything perfectly fine. This is our dedicated education kit, and I bet if I press the snapshot button, did Windows save it? Nope. Okay, well that's a bummer, but yeah, I was hoping the snapshot button would work in the Windows Camera store, or sorry, Windows Camera app. It doesn't. I've had mixed results with things like this supporting that. Yeah, so most of these software buttons unfortunately don't seem to work here. They will work in other things that support it. So as I mentioned, in fact, you can see here they've got various pieces of software for the education kit. Oh, there's a button driver for Windows. Let me install that, and then I bet those will all work. Because the only way I'm going to know what resolution I'm actually getting out of that sensor is to bring this up. And I don't fully anticipate the Windows Camera app supporting all of the bells and whistles out of this camera. And what I mean by that is, by default, I can see it only wants to, or it defaulted to one of the 3.8 megapixel, the 16:9 resolutions. So I just installed that software. We're going to bring it back up. And we're going to take a look here really quick. So by default, we can see it defaulted to 16:9, 2592 by 1458. We can bring that down to a more friendly 1920 by 1080 relatively easily. Because I want to see it do stuff, I'm going to jump up to the full 4:3, 5 megapixel. We can see that our viewing area actually changed. Video is limited to 30 frames a second and 16:9, which is disappointing, but isn't unexpected. Alright, so the activate button actually brought me to Chrome. Probably wants to use one of their web pieces of software. Let's go ahead and refocus. And I want to try this snapshot button. That's still not doing what I anticipate it to do. Nope. Okay, so that button driver does do stuff, but it anticipates that I use one of the other pieces of software, like their snapshot and recorder software from the education kit, which is a bummer. I had hoped that this button would just interface with the Windows camera app. I've got other cameras that do. I've got this Coolertron microscope that I've used for viewing what exactly SOC some things are. And the button actually will take a snapshot. Now, I'm not going to hold that against this camera because these buttons are meant to do a lot more than just take a picture in the Windows camera app. They're meant to integrate with these pieces of software. But I was hoping they'd do something by default. Does the zoom... Yeah, the zoom I'm guessing is just a digital zoom and is going to crop down inside that snapshot or the time-lapse recorder. Frame rate, looking at it here in the Windows camera, definitely seems like it's 30 FPS. Certainly consistent with what I would expect. So we're going to take a picture and then we're going to flip it over to video. And we're just going to record a few seconds of me moving. And we're going to play it back. There you have it. That's the Okiocam T and Okiocam S. Like I could plug in the S. It's going to work exactly the same as the T. Initial impressions are that the buttons don't quite work the way I had wanted them to. But that's okay. I get what they're going for. It's supposed to integrate with their software. I wish these... I don't anticipate these breaking. These look like they are a combination of metal and plastic. So there's little set screws in these hinges. And I don't... Maybe they're aluminum. They're not just plastic. In fact, I might, since this one has a teeny tiny screw that I can grab and take out, I might open this one and see if I can see what's inside it really quick. Because it looks like they would have used some kind of multi-piece construction to put this all together. Let's grab prying tool. That is fighting me to come out. Oh. Well, that is interesting. So it is just plastic, but it's very, very sturdy fiberglass reinforced plastic. No mark on exactly what type it is, but this is fiberglass reinforced. And it looks like they've used various metal inserts on the hinges, which we can see, to help with the rigidity and strength on this. Although what the purpose of this particular access door is, unless it was for installing this portion, which will that slide out now? Okay, so this was actually a retention screw for that part. Interesting. Alright, so initial impressions, I wish they had used metal tubes, but the plastic, the way they did it, it's fiberglass reinforced. I don't particularly see it being something that'll break. It's definitely something that they had to do to reach their price point. When you consider that just a regular 1080p webcam will run you 40 or 50 bucks, the fact that this is on an articulated arm, has the space, which, by the way, is magnetic. My wrist strap here on my watch is starting to grab this one, so there's definitely magnets and steel in there. I don't know why I had a harder time finding that on the other one. It could be that they're not super strong magnets, just strong enough to keep it in place when you're folding it up. So cost-wise, they're not, taking you to town or anything for any of this hardware. A decent 1080p webcam already costs 40 bucks or so, and then we've got all of these extension tubes and everything else. So this is particularly well done. I do like this. So these two are the two that go together when you're not at full height. There's an additional rib that sets inside here to increase how inflexible that is. And then, once again, storage is just like that, but we need to fold it up first. Everything folds up nice and neat. And same comment as the other one. There is no flatten out. There we go. There's no cable management included beyond what's on these tubes, which is great because that keeps the cable out of your workpiece, but doesn't do a whole ton as far as transporting it and storing it. Oh, I almost forgot. This camera is supposed to be removable. If I wiggle on, there we go. So that you can reverse the angle of the arm and have it over here relative to the base. It also has a tripod screw on it if you wanted to mount it on something that's not the included articulation. Although, man, that is a tight fit. Be careful. I bent my thumbnail doing that and regret it. So, and I'm actually going to kind of unfold this to, there we go, slide it back together, which is probably not recommended with it in the storage position like that, but it seemed to have fared just fine. There's no microphone in it, so if you do plan on using it as a webcam, you'll need a dedicated microphone. They mention on their website that most laptops and Android phones and things like that already have mics built in, which is fair. The lack of a microphone, obviously some of that cost that would go for including a mic, especially a decent mic. Obviously went into the additional functionality on these buttons. Real quick, who are these for? Well, if you're teaching from home, these are for you. These are going to let you write out paper notes just like you would normally and interact with your students. They're going to be a decent replacement for things like blackboards. So that's who the target market for these are. They're also going to be fairly popular, I think, for people in some of the maker communities. Being able to take good pictures of things like printed circuit boards. I'll probably take a small main board that I have somewhere. I think I've got a M72E motherboard in a box at the office that I can bring in and take some pictures using both of these when I do the full review. Stuff like that, these are going to work well for. Demonstrations on electronics, they're going to work great for. The only thing that I can think of that I would say if you're going to do stuff like that is that's the type of usage where you'd want to swing the camera out over the backside of it, just so that you don't hit this nice mat with a soldering iron. You know, you'd want to do that over your typical soldering workpiece. So anyway, we're going to be looking at that. I'm going to take time and test all this software when we do a full review. This was just a quick overview and a look at things. I wanted to get this out before I had a meeting with Okiocam so that I could make sure to bring any of your questions to them. And I'm sorry that's on Tuesday. This will be live on Sunday probably. So I don't have a ton of time to get those questions in, but I do want to make sure that I have them. And of course, obviously, Okiocam sent these in, so we're being as fair and unbiased as we can, but I do want to disclose that. Finally, I do want to take a second to thank our patrons for helping make content like this possible. There'll be a link to our Patreon in the description below. I also want to thank anyone who uses our Amazon links to help support Pocketables. Stuff like that helps me buy various things that we use when we test stuff like this. I also want to thank Electrix for providing our opening and closing themes. And I want to thank everyone for watching.